I never thought I'd end up here, standing in front of a child who's not mine, forced to make a decision that will change my life forever. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we dive into the story of a man named Adam, who recently faced one of the hardest challenges of his life. A painful divorce after discovering his wife Claire's betrayal. Once, they had shared a life full of promises. But now, Adam finds himself standing on the edge of an emotional cliff. He's forced to make a decision that will change everything. The child Claire left behind isn't his. Yet now, he needs Adam more than ever. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to face an unexpected responsibility, one you didn't choose but couldn't turn away from? Today's story is not just about betrayal, but also about forgiveness, taking responsibility, and finding a new purpose in life after it all falls apart. Stay until the end of the story to see how Adam navigates through the pain and makes the ultimate decision that could give this child a future. And I hope you'll subscribe to my channel, as your support motivates me to continue bringing more meaningful and heartfelt stories like this to you. My name is Adam Walker, and this is the story of how my life was ripped apart, and how, despite everything, I found a way to piece it back together. The day began like any other. I stood there, staring at the hospital bed where my wife, Claire, held our newborn son in her arms. The room felt suffocatingly quiet, yet my heartbeat pounded in my ears. My eyes fixed on the baby, but I couldn't muster a smile. How could I? Not when I was standing on the precipice of a lie so massive it threatened to consume everything. Claire's face was glowing with exhaustion. She smiled at the baby, a smile that should have been full of joy, but it only reminded me of the trust we once had, trust one no longer had in her. Her mother, Natalie, stood beside her, beaming proudly. On the other side, my own mother, Helen, offered a warm, supportive look that felt like a weight pressing down on me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Adam, the nurse said, breaking the stillness as she entered the room. I just need you to sign the birth certificate form. I turned to her, my eyes cold and empty. We'll fill it out after the DNA test, I said flatly, my voice devoid of emotion. The words hung in the air. Claire's face immediately shifted, the color draining from her cheeks. Her mother gasped. Helen, too, froze. The tension between us felt like a thick fog, suffocating me. Adam, Claire whispered, a tremor in her voice. What are you talking about? I'm talking about making sure this baby is actually mine, I replied, my tone still level but sharp. I need to know the truth. The evening had settled into a quiet, uneasy stillness as I walked into the coffee shop. It was the same one Claire and I had visited countless times before. The same place where we'd shared dreams, where laughter and love once flowed easily between us. A place where, for a while, I believed we were invincible. Now, as I stepped inside, the once familiar hum of conversation and clinking cups felt like a distant memory. The cozy, rustic ambience was no longer warm. Instead, it was a hollow shell, reflecting the emptiness I felt inside. I couldn't look at Claire without seeing the lie she'd hidden behind the smile she gave our son. That smile, that beautiful, heartbreaking smile. It was the smile of a woman who had managed to bury the guilt and shame beneath the facade of motherhood. But I saw through it. I knew the truth now. She was sitting there, at the same table where we had spent so many mornings sipping coffee, planning our future. But now it felt like a battlefield. There was no more joy, no more plans. Just the weight of everything that had gone wrong, hanging heavily in the air between us. I sat down across from her, my heart racing. I couldn't help it. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. It was all crashing over me like a tidal wave. But I had to keep my calm. I had to hold it together because if I didn't, I knew I'd lose everything I had left. Claire looked up at me, and for a second, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. It vanished so quickly, I almost convinced myself it wasn't there at all. She cleared her throat, her fingers nervously tapping on the table. I don't know what you're talking about, Adam, she finally said, her voice wavering slightly, as if she were trying to keep herself from completely breaking down. This is crazy. I leaned forward, narrowing my eyes. Don't lie to me, Claire. I know about Ethan. I know about what happened between you two. For a split second, I saw her flinch. It was subtle, but I noticed it. Her lips quivered, and her hands clenched into fists beneath the table. She looked like she was about to say something, but then her face twisted. It wasn't anger, it wasn't guilt. It was something else. Desperation. It was a look I hadn't seen on her before, and it unsettled me in ways I couldn't explain. Ethan was just someone who was there, she said, her voice faltering, almost as if she couldn't even believe the words herself. He was there when you weren't. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Someone who was there? I repeated, my voice low, almost dangerous. You don't get to use that as an excuse, Claire. You slept with him. You betrayed me, Claire. And now you expect me to act like everything's fine? Like I'm just supposed to overlook what you did. I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady myself. The rage inside me was building, but I forced myself to breathe, to focus. I needed the truth from her, whatever it took. But every word out of her mouth only made it worse. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room, as if looking for an escape. But there was no escape. Not anymore. It was just a mistake, she said, her voice soft, too soft. I was lonely. You were never around, Adam. You were always working, always distracted. I needed someone. I just needed to feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how selfish and hurtful her excuses sounded. But I couldn't. I couldn't let myself lose control, not now. A mistake, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You think this is just some small mistake? You think sleeping with someone else is just a minor blip? I want you to tell me the truth, Claire. How could you do this to me? To us? To everything we built together? Her lips trembled, and I could see her eyes welling up with tears. I didn't feel sorry for her. Couldn't. Not after everything she had done. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Adam. But the words felt hollow. I had heard them 1,000 times before in different forms from different people. And they never made it better. Never made it easier. I pulled out the crumpled piece of paper from my pocket, the one that had sealed everything for me. I unfolded it slowly, watching her face as I did. The silence in the room grew thick. I held the paper up, and without breaking eye contact, I began to read aloud. We can never let Adam know about us. I read. I don't want to be involved with you anymore. Claire's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I could see the tears brimming in her eyes, her entire body shaking. How did you get this? She gasped, her voice barely audible. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I leaned in closer, making sure she heard every word I was about to say. I have my ways, I said, my voice cold, final. There was no warmth left in me, no softness in my tone. Now, the question remains, what are you going to do about it? Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. The courtroom felt like a cold, impersonal space. Its sterile white walls, the constant hum of whispered conversations, the clicking of pens and the shuffling of papers. It was a space where lives were decided in a matter of seconds. But it wasn't just my life that was hanging in the balance. The echoes of betrayal, the silence between us, the unspoken pain of a broken marriage filled every inch of that room. I sat on the witness stand, my jaw set in determination, trying to maintain my composure. My hands were clenched, palms sweaty. It was hard to focus on anything else but the sight of Claire sitting across the room, her gaze averted, her shoulders hunched as if she was trying to shrink away from the weight of the accusations piling up against her. For the first time in this entire nightmare, I could sense her discomfort. She wasn't the confident, dismissive woman who had once held my heart. No, she was now a woman exposed, stripped of her defenses, and it made everything feel that much worse. My lawyer, Jake, a seasoned professional, was the one doing the talking. His voice was calm but firm, each word measured and precise. He had prepared meticulously for this day, but no legal argument could truly fix the emotional wreckage Claire had caused in my life. This was bigger than contracts, legalities, and settlements. It was about trust, about what we had lost, about the future that would never be the same. Your Honor, Jake began, his voice cutting through the room. Let's establish the facts clearly. The defendant, Mrs. Claire Taylor, was involved in an affair with her co-worker, Mr. Ethan Parker. We have the text messages, the emails, the phone records to prove it. The DNA test results show that the child she is claiming as Mr. Walker's is not his. Now, my client, Mr. Adam Walker, has no obligation to accept a child that is not his own, and certainly, he is not going to tolerate being manipulated. The words hung in the air like a hammer falling down. I could feel my breath catch in my throat, but I didn't look away. Couldn't look away. I had to hear it all. I had to know. I wanted her to hear it, too. Claire's face twisted as the words hit her like a physical blow. She looked down at her lap, avoiding my gaze. Her hands, which had been nervously shifting papers in front of her, now sat still, clenched into fists. The silence between us was deafening. The lawyer's words rang louder than any accusation I had thrown at her. She had been caught, cornered in the truth, and now she had nowhere to run. Her eyes flickered briefly in my direction, but she couldn't hold my gaze. She seemed smaller, more fragile somehow. But the damage was done. I didn't do this to you, Adam, Claire whispered, her voice faltering as she tried to regain some semblance of control. She was grasping for anything, for some excuse, some explanation that could absolve her. I didn't mean for it to happen. You have to understand that. My anger flared, but I held it in. For the first time in months, I wasn't just a victim of her lies. I was taking control. The past couldn't be erased, no matter how many excuses she tried to make. Understand, I repeated, leaning forward, my voice cutting through the thick air between us. Understand that you lied, that you betrayed everything we had? Understand that you destroyed my trust? You want me to feel sorry for you, to believe that this was all just some mistake. Her shoulders trembled, and her lips quivered, but she remained silent. The weight of the room shifted, and I could see it in her eyes. There was no more pretending. There was no way to spin this. The truth had already been laid bare. Jake continued, pushing forward with the evidence, painting the picture of Claire as the one who had destroyed this marriage. Let's talk about the truth, Mrs. Taylor. Jake's voice was unyielding. You were the one who broke this marriage. You were the one who chose to cheat. My client is simply standing up for what's right. He's not going to be forced into raising a child that isn't his own. Claire opened her mouth to say something, but then closed it again, her words dying in her throat. I saw her struggle, her lips pressing together as if the weight of the reality was finally sinking in. Isn't that what you wanted all along, Claire? I said, my voice low but firm. You wanted to pretend like everything would go back to normal. You thought I would just accept it, move past your betrayal, and continue on as if nothing had happened. Well, I'm not doing that. Not anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but the tears no longer had any power over me. The woman who had once been my partner, my confidant, was now just a stranger. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I trusted, was gone. The judge, who had been observing us quietly, finally spoke, breaking the silence. Mr. Walker, she said, her voice calm but stern. You've presented your case. The evidence is clear. This marriage is irreparably broken. The words were a final blow. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but it was bittersweet. The judge turned to Claire. As for the child, the judge continued, the paternity will be determined through the DNA test. You both will divide your assets evenly as per the law. But Mr. Walker is not obligated to accept responsibility for a child that is not his own. Claire's face crumpled as the judge's words echoed in the room. She sat back in her chair, defeated. The weight of the decision had hit her harder than I ever could. There was no more pretending, no more lies. I stood up, feeling the finality of the moment settle in my chest. It was over. The marriage, the lies, everything. Jake turned to me as we left the stand, his voice soft. "You did the right thing, Adam. Now you can move forward. This chapter is closed." But even as I walked out of that courtroom, I knew the real battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. The apartment was small, modest, even, but for the first time in what felt like forever, it was mine. As the sunlight streamed through the window, casting its warm glow across the space, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of comfort. The space was quiet, simple, nothing extravagant, but that's what made it feel like a clean slate. I stood by the small crib, watching the child lying peacefully inside. His face, still soft and innocent, stared back at me as if he were waiting for something. I hadn't known how to feel about him when I first saw him, but now, standing here, looking at him, I felt a pang of something unexpected, a surge of responsibility. It wasn't love yet, but it was something. I wasn't sure if I could love him the way he deserved, but what I knew for sure was that I couldn't turn away from him. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. The divorce had been finalized. The papers were signed. The mess of our past swept into separate corners. But the aftermath was something I could never escape. I moved into this small apartment because it felt like the right thing to do. Not because I had to, but because for once it felt like a step in the right direction. A fresh start, a place where I could begin to find myself again. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of my mistakes pressing down on me. I didn't feel like a failure, but that feeling of relief didn't last long. The past still loomed in the corners of my mind, like an unwelcome shadow that refused to leave. And then, as if fate decided to remind me of my broken past, I got the call. It was Natalie, Claire's mother. "Adam," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "I need to talk to you. It's about Claire. She's gone. She was in a car accident." The words hit me like a freight train. Claire was gone. The woman who had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way, the woman I once loved, was now nothing but a memory. She had taken part of me when she left, a piece of me I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. But when I heard the news, there was no relief. There was no sense of closure, no catharsis. There was just an overwhelming emptiness, like a heavy weight in my chest that refused to lift. I felt numb, not just from the shock, but from the reality of everything she had done to me. She was gone, but the pain she caused would stay with me forever. In the days that followed, I tried to numb myself, focusing on anything that would keep me from thinking about the hole Claire had left in my life. Then, just as I was starting to think that maybe I could finally move on, the phone rang again. It was Natalie. She had one more thing to ask of me. "Adam," she said, her voice soft yet urgent. "I know this is a lot to ask, but I need you to take care of the baby. You're the only one left. I know he's not yours, but he needs a father." Her words struck me harder than I expected. I looked over at the crib again, my eyes lingering on the baby, the child who wasn't mine by blood, but who now had no one else. For the first time in months, the anger and bitterness that had consumed me since the divorce started to fade. In their place, something else grew, a sense of responsibility. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to be a father. How could I be? I had spent years building walls around my heart, refusing to let anyone close enough to hurt me again. I had spent so long focusing on my own pain that I wasn't sure I could give the love and care this child deserved. But as I stood there, staring at him, I realized something. I couldn't turn away. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady, even though I felt anything but certain. I wasn't doing this for Claire. I wasn't doing this to right the wrongs of the past. This was about him, about this little boy who had no say in the mess his mother had left behind. He was innocent in all of this, and as I looked down at him, I realized that despite all my reservations, despite the fear that gripped my chest, I couldn't let him grow up without a chance. I reached down, my fingers brushing against the soft edge of the crib. He stirred slightly, his tiny hand grasping the edge of the blanket. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was it. This was the decision that would change everything. I wasn't sure if I could love him the way he deserved, but I would try. I would try for him. I would give him the security and love that I had once wished for, the love that I had denied myself for so long. And as I stood there, a wave of determination swept over me. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a purpose. I wasn't going to abandon him. I wasn't going to let his life be defined by the mistakes of his mother. I would be his father, no matter what, and maybe, just maybe, I would learn to love him the way he needed. So, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or any feedback you have on this journey. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you can be the first to hear the next chapter of this story. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to bring you along for the next adventure. Thank you so much for sticking around until the very end of this story. Until next time,